Welcome to 9.2 everyone, Shirley here, and today we're in the new raid, taking a look at Halondrus on Heroic difficulty, the 7th boss in the raid. It's a little bit of a difficulty spike, I'd say, compared to the preceding bosses, so I wanted to start here rather than the very first boss of the raid, because it's kind of a joke, and Mythic will be out next week. So, jumping right into the poll here, we're going to go ahead and spread out all around the boss because of two mechanics that he'll do periodically. Also, the boss doesn't parry, so you don't have to worry about, standing in front of it or anything. It's not that big of a deal. Plus, your tanks are going to be spinning him around all the time anyway. But the first thing is these orbs. You see one on the left side there that my tank is about to touch, and it's going to bounce it back. Those we need to play soccer with, basically, and keep them from ever touching the boss. If any of those ever touch the boss, it's basically a wipe. And then the other mechanic is this right here, this giant circle debuff that goes out, drops a missile on your head, and then it causes a little earthquake explosion. Don't get too close to it like I did there. You want to spread out as much as you can and, avoid clipping other people with that, of course. But if you can get it in any uptime while you're doing that, obviously that's ideal. Speaking of which, his hitbox is pretty big, so you can stand, 3 yards or so back from his hitbox. So you can do that to drop the missile, and then you can move into his hitbox slightly. That way you can avoid the aftershock explosion on the ground. However, you see that blue kind of light pool thing from underneath the boss. You don't want to be underneath him because it'll do damage to you. So you can kind of game it a little bit. There is a little bit of a window that you can sneak in right here that it won't hurt you. And other than that, during the first phase, the reclaim cast he does, that's when I'm going to go ahead and use my Die by the Sword because it's just a lot of raid-wide damage. And then we're going into the first intermission phase here. One thing is when he goes into the intermission phase and he stands up, all the little orbs you're playing soccer with will despawn, so you don't have to worry about soaking any, right at the last second there, like there was a couple next to me. It's just unnecessary damage on yourself, so you don't have to worry about that. And while Halondrus walks down this path here, we got a few things to deal with. This Knockback Explosion. There's two ways you can deal with that as a warrior. You can just Blade Storm it, and you'll be immune to the knockbacks, so if you want, just, if you're in a bad spot, rather, you could do that. Or you can be ahead of the boss and kind of plan out where you're going to be, so this knockback doesn't knock you off the edge of the bridge. That's that Shatter cast. These shatter missile things that are on the sides that cause the knockback themselves are always in the same spot, so you can plan ahead where you want to be, so you don't get caught off guard or anything. Generally speaking, you want to be in front of the boss, though, but on either side of him. That way, when the earthquake missiles come in, you can move underneath the boss to avoid the knockback, or not the knockback, but the explosion radius. And during his transition movement phase, you can be under the boss without having to worry about this blue pool hurting you, because it's not casting during that time. And then we're going to get into phase 2, so he's in his next room here, and we have these orbs that are slowly rotating around the room. You just avoid, you just don't get hit by it, as well as the tank beam, which you just saw on the left side there. The tank is going to be aiming that at these orbs that are floating into the back here, so we can knock them out of the way. So right here, I'm inside of his hitbox, avoiding that explosion, but you're not taking the pool damage underneath, so there is a little bit of leeway that you can actually play with there. That's just fine. Otherwise, we're going to be spreading out around the boss as much as possible, and I would say to point out that anytime that you're soaking, or not soaking, but spreading out for the missiles, and then you're moving in to find free gaps so you can continue to do damage, you definitely want to keep in mind that you want to be moving back towards your original position, wherever you were at around the boss, just so your raid doesn't get clumped up progressively more as the fight goes on. And then he's going to do his second reclaim here, and where you're going to be, knocking back more of those orbs. Once again, great time to use your parry, because this is the biggest damage portions of the phase, is during those reclaim casts. That, and you can throw up a spell reflect to help negate knocking back those orbs. It won't actually reflect them, but you're taking less magic damage from it. And during the second intermission here, there's the first shatter going out. I'm moving in front so I can charge back for some free rage, of course, and then I'm moving off to the side here. That way we can go underneath the boss during his movement phase here. We want to get in as much damage as possible while he's moving, and that's just to make the final phase of the fight that much easier. So during the first intermission, I had all my cooldowns come back up right as he stands up and starts that intermission phase. You can go ahead and just send Avatar and Ancient Aftershock and all that jazz right away. During phase 2 there, I'm going to go ahead and use it again immediately because it's going to come up again, as you saw right, towards the beginning of this phase. You've got a full burn with all your cooldowns during his movement phase, and we're just going to go ahead and do that, even though we're not getting the value out of Dreamweaver, the Ancient Aftershock haste buff that's on the ground, but it's still worth doing it just to make the final phase that much easier. Maybe with gear later on in tier sets and everything that will change, but as it is right now, yeah, we got the boss down to about 26% HP here going into the last phase. This is pretty good. So the final phase is where the fight really starts, and as you can see, these orbs that are rotating around the room, there's more of them now than there were during phase 2. There's no longer a gap in it. So you constantly have to be rotating around the boss, and there's more of these orbs that you need to play soccer with. And they are definitely the biggest priority in this fight. You just want to be watching out for these all the time because this is what's going to wipe you during the last phase, and it's basically kill the boss before the raid damage just gets to be too much and kills your raid. So once again, we have to spread out and avoid the earthquake explosions. You're probably going to want to save your parry for this final bit if you didn't use it a little bit earlier, and trying to just negate as much damage from these orbs as possible with Reflect and everything. My rally is going to be coming up here shortly. That'll be useful as well. And I'm trying to rotate around and stay right behind these orb lines, the big orb, the laser beam, if you will, just so we can catch any that might be coming in towards the boss in that orb line that people don't, want to be in, because that's going to hurt you, of course. So trying to catch these as soon as possible and keep them rotating back. Do get pretty low here. We're going to go ahead and send up our last rallying cry. And really, it's just a rinse repeat on this burn here. And down goes the Halo tank. If you have any questions, this was a really fun fight, but if you have any questions, feel free to leave them down below. What's everybody's thoughts on the new raid so far? I'm actually enjoying it quite a bit. Anduin is something else. Makes me very curious to see the final 3 bosses next week for the Raced World first. But anyway, I'll see you guys next time. Thanks for watching. Peace.